Good morning, Jorge. Can you hear me?
Good morning, Antoine. How are you?
I just made it. And some connectivity and audio issues, but I think it's all right now.
Well, we waited for Jim to arrive.
Oh, Jim is late. That's not Jim.
Start without me?
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Let's get started. Sorry for the little delay. Welcome to the REGEXT working group. This is the not well. Please keep in mind that just by participating in the IETF, you are accepting this not well. This is the agenda for today. We have the not well that you saw. We have a welcome introduction. Do you want to start that for the control the slides?
Go ahead, keep going.
Okay. Do we have a not describe?
No, we don't. We should.
There isn't anyone willing to participate as a note scriber. Okay. Thank you, Kevin. Okay, for the shepherds, we're still looking for volunteers for document shepherds for all the documents we are producing. We have many people that have volunteered in the past, and they're doing a great job as a shepherd, but it's always a great opportunity to work as a shepherd and get forward in making sure the documents get published. Publishing documents, we only have one in this category. Registration data access protocol for regional internet registry search. Submitted to the ISG. We have the DNS title leak for RDAP. Documents in the working group last call. This last call just ended a couple of days ago. So Scott already had published a new document with all the feedback incorporated. So I think we're ready for let the document checker do the write out and proceed with the documents. Existing work with a presentation. And the first document is JS card for RDAP and JSON responses for Mario.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Mario.
Okay. I have very little to say about this draft. Following the working group consensus on making the draft standard track again, I removed the experiment section and changed the draft category accordingly. The document is now ready for the working group last call, except for the NEAT recently discovered by Martin that will be fixed in next version, along with possible changing addressing the feedback from last call. That's it.
Thank you, Mario. EPP transfer over quick. James Gould.
Yeah, so the 04 draft was just posted, which includes feedback from Martin Thompson from the Quick Working Group. So we have addressed both feedback from two individuals from the Quick Working Group, and I believe that there's no remaining work for this draft. So unless there's any additional feedback from the mailing list, this draft is ready for working group last call.
So I think the question, Jim, is we've always been treating this document as a pair with HTTPS. So are we
Yes.
still doing that?
We can. Actually, I have some more positive news on the EPP over HTTPS draft. They can go separately. The advantage that of having them go together is that they're very similar in their content. So it would make review of both of them easier. But they could go separate. I'm not sure if we want to hold off the EPP over quick draft if the EPP over HTTPS is going to take longer. Like, I'm not sure how much longer, but I'm not sure if you're going to hold it off. That's all.
So I think what we're going to need to do, since we've been in the working group, we have been treating them as a pair. We're going to have to ask on the list and make sure that no one has any other concerns about splitting them. So we certainly take here your request to think about moving it to working group last call. But as with Mario and the JS contact draft, you need to ask on the mailing list. And I would say that you need to ask on the mailing list to add to your question to explicitly separate it from HTTPS. We just need to make sure
Okay.
that no one has any objections or concerns about that.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Yeah, no problem. I can do that.
Okay, thank you. Next up is the versioning in RDAP, and that is also going to you, Jim.
Yeah, so I'm going to be set up a meeting, hopefully next week if I can coordinate that, with the co-editors of the versioning, the media type, and the extensions draft, because there are what I see as incompatibilities between those three drafts that we need to work out. So I'm hoping to have a positive working session with those co-editors between the three drafts so that we can make them compatible with each other.
Okay, so who are you talking about being in that meeting? You, I assume Andy, Jazdip, Mario?
Andy, Jazdip, and Tom. I think it's Tom as well.
Tom, why Tom?
Harrison. Is it Harrison? I think he's. Which one's he on? I think
he's
it's
on the extension draft. Okay.
That's
Andy
correct.
just offered
Yeah.
that up in the room. I'm sorry. We just don't have his name on the slide. So thank
Yeah.
you. Okay. So I think from a chair's perspective, the important point here, one of the questions that I had about these is we had originally we were talking about the three of these documents being together, three being the extensions document, which we're going to get to in the next section, versioning, and the X media type document. They were at one time all considered together. We separated them, but these two, versioning and the X media type, would wait for the extensions draft to move forward. And we did come to that conclusion in the working group. Is there any reason to change that, or we still, even though you're going to be talking about editing these documents, is there any reason why that would change?
No. I just we just need to make sure that the extensions draft doesn't have any overlap or incompatibilities for what exists in those other drafts.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Now I can even hear my voice in the room. I got closer to the mic. It probably didn't change remotely, but it's made a big difference in the room. Okay. Thank you for that. So the action here, have you spoken about the X media type then, or did you want to add anything with respect to that document?
Am I on that? I'm not. I shouldn't be on that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can speak to it.
You can speak to it, please.
Yeah, so Jasdeep and I think we submitted a version a couple of months ago, but we're kind of holding until the extensions draft. We're putting more of our energy on the extensions draft at the moment because, as you just said, that's supposed to go first. So, and that's the status for the extensions draft too. So,
okay, thank you for that. Okay, so just to summarize here, just to make sure that chairs are clear, you, Jim Gould, are working, you're going to set up a little separate meeting among the editors here to make sure that all your documents are aligned. All three of the documents, meaning extensions, versioning, and X media type. And then we'll be waiting for extensions to move along before these two move along. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay,
Absolutely.
thank you. And I now see Gavin at the mic, please.
Just to briefly talk about the RDAP referrals. We had our review from HTTP Directorate with some changes that suggested. I think we're going to make them. We've had very little in the way of working group input, but we kind of feel like it's kind of done. So we're yeah. Sorry, it's a bit low. So I think I kind of feel like it's getting ready for last call as well, but would like some feedback from the working group first because we haven't had much, and it's quite a meaty change. So it's worth having a bit of a look at it first before we go to last call.
A meaty change recently to which one?
Just the referrals changes the way that RDAP clients interact with RDAP servers quite a bit, and if it's going to get any deployment, it's going to have quite a big impact on certain kind of RDAP service ecosystems, and so I think it's worth having we think it's right. I think it works. We think it solves a big problem. So we've only got so many eyeballs between me and Andy, and so we kind of like a few more, please. Thank you.
I'm sorry, before you leave the mic, I think I missed something there at the beginning.
Okay.
Were you talking about these two documents?
No,
version
so I'm
meets
talking
meeting
about
type?
RDAP referrals. Sorry, I was moving on to my.
Okay, so you
my
jumped to the bottom
yeah,
and talk about the
apologies,
redirects. Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. And just so I understand, you're also suggesting that the referrals document, or I guess it's called redirects now, has an impact on these other.
No, sorry. I apologize. I was not very clear when I came up to the mic, probably because you couldn't hear me. So I was just giving my update on the RDAP referrals draft rather than any comment on the other three.
Okay.
Apologies.
And I am aware that you've done an HTTP review there.
Yes.
And yes, we should wait for that to conclude. And then you can ask and seek working group last call on that document at that time. And I assume you're going to be talking to the editors, not just Andy, but the others here about the other documents and make sure that they're aligned and the
Yes.
impact is addressed. Okay. Just trying to capture actions. Thank you. Okay. You also made the comment that I do want to repeat in general, which is it's always useful. People should read the documents, and I know that we have a limited set of people who tend to care about particular documents, but it's always helpful, even if you just say no objection. It really is good to hear from people that you have looked at the document. I mean, at a minimum, if you can say something like no objection, we very much appreciate that, as opposed to waiting for last call to read it, which we seem to get a lot in this working group, but a little advance notice is always nice. So makes last call go a little more smoothly. Thanks for that. Okay, next up is balance mapping. So back to you, Jim.
There's right now, I've asked Warner Staub to be a co-editor with the chairs, and I believe the chairs, you've agreed to that, adding him as a co-editor. I didn't hear any concerns on it. But that we met, and there are some changes that we're proposing to make the draft that I posted to the list. So any review of those proposed changes would be welcome. And those changes will be incorporated in the 01 draft. And then I did want one draft that's not on the list is the EPP transport over HTTPS.
That
And
says
I wanted
presentation in the next section.
Oh, okay, forget it. Well, I don't think Mario knows this. I just want to point out, we had a very productive meeting with Mark Nottingham earlier today, and I sent him the latest version of the draft, and he understands what it is that we're attempting to accomplish, and it seemed like he was receptive to it. So with that, I'll let Mario handle the rest.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And then with RDAP extensions, Andy, you already commented on that, so we're already caught up. You have some things you're going to do there, and potentially there'll be another version, and then you'll be asking for working group last call. And thank you, Gavin. We've already covered RDAP referrals. Okay. In spite of the fact that I was late, which I apologize for, I had set in my mind this meeting was at 4:30. And even though Jorge told me earlier today, no, Jim, it's at 4 o'clock, I still managed to miss it. But we are now only 2 minutes behind. So thank you for that. And moving on, that takes us to existing work of the presentations. And I believe first up is the ARC PKI document. Is Jasdeep doing that? Is he online?
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can, loud and clear.
Wonderful. So can somebody run the slides for me, please?
Would you like the control, the clicker control?
And no, thanks. Hey, so yeah, this is early here on the East Coast of the United States. So pardon me if not thinking that clearly at times. And if I don't, I'll get back to any questions. So yeah, this is an update on the RDAP extension for RPKI registration data. If I recall, last we talked about it was almost a year back, so it's a good thing to see where we are. Andy and myself, we are the co-authors. Next slide, please. So we are, I think, on version 03. And I just wanted to walk through quickly what are the changes which have been made to this extension. Number one is essentially this extension, just a quick sort of a brief background. It talks about 3 different types of RPKI profiles, ROA, ASPA, and resource certificate. ASPA, which is, this work is getting done in the CIDR-Ops working group. We keep up with how those changes are being made. So we have renamed the Otnum member as customer Otnum in the ASPA RDAP object class because it was renamed in that profile. Next one, based on the feedback from RPKI community, we now include message digests that entirely cover an RPKI object. And there are 2 of them, SHA-256 and 512. The reason for that is that this gives sorry, just quickly. So the reason we do that is because this gives us an exact sort of reference to the underlying RPKI object. And that's useful when you're doing analysis, research, and or debugging. So that's the reason for that. Then there was a very interesting problem, and this helps grow the RDAP ecosystem. There are 3 types of RPKI configurations. Obviously hosted, which most registries do on the number resources side. But there's also other 2 called delegated and hybrid, without getting into the details of that. But we now have a methodology to be able to have RDAP services on those types of configurations also. And in the process, we introduced a new relation type in web links called RDAP-help. So yeah, please check that out. The next one, deconflict lookup path segments. So as this draft was getting prototyped, which I'll talk about in the next slide, we realized a couple of places where our path segments were not right. For example, for ROA, you can look up by handle or by a natural identifier like IP address. So that has been deconflicted. We included more useful reverse searches. And in the process, we also found out a way to rather more elegantly include RPKI-related reverse search links in entity, IP network, and autonomous system number objects. And the reason for that is that will make the responses not grow too big. So that was taken care of. And finally, we observed that now that we have lookup by handle, we did not want to introduce search by handle. So that was removed. So these are the changes which have been made. Next slide, please. So what have been the activities in that time I mentioned? So there have been two. One is Erin. We at Erin have prototyped the salient lookup and search paths. I believe there are close to 35 plus different lookup and search paths. And when I say search paths, I also include reverse search paths. So at this point, we have done, just like drawing a Picasso, the more salient ones to do a proof of concept of this. So that was done. And then also, that prototype was demoed to our peer RARs, mainly to solicit further feedback. And there were a couple of more feedbacks on that. And we met earlier this year. So that will be taken care of. Next slide, please. So as next steps, we're going to add an implementation status section. And the reason, though the prototype is there, we need to make sure it's publicly available. And the benefit of that is this is that ethos of rough consensus and running code. So we want to make sure it's available during working group last call and or ISG review later on. Next, as I mentioned, there's a little bit more feedback to incorporate from the prototype demo. To be precise, it is about the signing time attribute. I believe it's the RFC 9589. So that's something which I think it was Tim Brisnell who suggested from RIPE. He's like, I think it'll be helpful to include that. And then, yes, as I mentioned, we'll at that point, now that we are a little more confident about the correctness of the content in the draft, especially after implementing the prototype, I think we'll be requesting the working group last call. So don't want to put any particular timeline on it, but hopefully this all happens this year. Next slide, please. Yeah, so these are a couple of references if you're interested. We have been tracking the issues in GitHub. Obviously, the draft everyone knows. So thank you. Thanks. That's, I believe, the last slide.
Thank you, Jasdeep. Any questions or comments from the floor? Not seeing any hands going up. So I'll just comment. Thank you. I'm sorry. Am I missing it? I'm not seeing a queue. Why is the queue not showing for me? Oh, Richard, please go ahead, Rick.
Thanks.
I
Thanks,
really
Jim.
just have to get into the swing of things here.
More coffee for Jim. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. Seriously, go ahead, Rick. I'm sorry.
Very, very good. Thank you. Thank you, Jasdeep, for the presentation. Just a real quick question. When I was reading this, one of the things, and you highlighted it on the presentation, was the new RDAP-help, I guess, link or reference, or I'm not quite exactly sure what you call it. Does anybody else think that might be more generally useful? I was interested in reading this to come across it, and I'm wondering if it's something that we might gain utility in other spots. You know, it's coming up here in this RPKI sense, and I'm wondering if it's something that, like we've discovered here, I'll say we as a community, I mean, you and Andy kind of bumped into this as a solution to a problem. And I'm wondering if we might generalize it to other spots and it might kind of serve to untangle some things or smooth some things out that we might have previously left tangled or gnarly. And that's not really a technical term. Your or anyone else's thoughts on that? Thank you.
So I think I'll start and then Andy can help. I think the inspiration was how in RAR search, we introduced new relation types, RDEP dash up, down. I'm not sure about, and a couple of others. And the idea is that when you're defining, and obviously a media type is RDEP plus JSON, Rick. And the idea is it helps the clients because it's all trying to think from client-centric perspective, not just that servers don't matter, server side. But you're right that this is something, and in fact, this was Mark Nottingham who said that, hey, why don't you guys start using, if you're going to introduce new relation types, prefix them with RDEP dash. So that's a pattern that we are using. And in fact, I think Andy can correct me, we even mentioned that in extensions draft now. So yeah, I think you're spot on. This can be useful. For us, it was very useful because clients can now identify this web link quickly and then use it vis-a-vis the RDEP RPKI. Yes, so I would say yes. It will be useful.
Okay, thank you. We've locked the queue at this point. We are actually over time, but Andy, please go ahead. We'll let one more question go.
Yeah, I just want to respond to what Rick said. Yeah, so I think we should look to see if it's more generally useful. The RDAP up, RDAP down stuff in the RAR draft, RAR reverse search draft. Sorry, it's early for me too. The is also useful in other places, so we can look for that. And I just kind of want to know if what Rick meant by gnarly was like surfer do gnarly, or if it was some other connotation. All right, thanks.
Okay, so you were not expecting an answer. That was a comment? Oh, okay. All right, thank you. So just a general comment about this document. It's good the work is progressing. And we're going to add it to the long list of documents which are really on their way out the door in our group. We've had quite a few documents that have been hanging there, and it's really just delightful from a chair's point of view to see these things coming to closure. So next up, we have Mario is going to talk to us about EPP over HTTPS. So Mario, please go ahead.
Yes, can you run the slide for me, please?
Yes, we will.
Yeah, this is a short update on the status of EPP over HTTPS draft. It briefly covers recent revisions, architecture issues raised, and potential next steps for the working group in light of the talk of James with Mark Nottingham. Please, James, chime in anytime if you want to add something or skip some content. Next slide, please. Last September, James Good requested feedback from HTTP BIS working group. We received comments from the authors of RFC 6265 BIS. Those comments were addressed in the draft. We subsequently requested a review from the HTTP Directorate. This review raised concerns about the relationship between the draft and BCP 56. In particular, the review suggested that either EPP semantics should be mapped more directly to HTTP or the connect method should be used. Next slide, please. Our interpretation of BCP 56 is that it primarily applies to the design of new HTTP application protocols. In other words, it is mainly about cases where HTTP is being used as the application model. But this draft does not define a new application protocol using HTTP. Instead, it defines a transport mapping for an existing protocol. So the real question then is whether HTTP native design is the right framework for evaluating this draft. Next slide, please. To make this point clearer, it may help to compare EPP over HTTPS with similar IETF work, namely DNS over HTTPS and oblivious HTTP. In all three cases, HTTP carries messages from another protocol rather than designing a new HTTP native application model. Another similarity is that HTTP status codes are not used to represent the application level result. Instead, the result is conveyed inside the protocol payload. So the pattern of using HTTP as a transport substrate already exists in other IETF protocols. Next slide, please. This is can be considered another point of friction. BCP 56 encourages protocols using HTTP to be stateless and to rely on HTTP semantics. But RFC 5730 explicitly defines EPP as a stateful protocol and requires that any transport mapping preserve the stateful behavior. So when defining EPP over HTTPS, we must keep the EPP session model intact. Next slide, please. Regarding the suggestion from the HTTP directorate, one was to map EPP commands more directly to HTTP methods. However, that would effectively redefine EPP as a new HTTP native protocol. RFC 5730 assumes a clear separation between EPP semantics and the transport layer. If we try to map EPP operation directly to HTTP methods and resources, we would have to invent a new resource model for EPP objects. Also, the HTTP status codes and EPP result codes serve different purposes. HTTP status codes indicate where the HTTP exchange itself was successful, while EPP result codes tell you what happened at the registry protocol level. And finally, EPP relies on an explicit login logout session model. Next slide, please. The other suggestion was to use Connect, but while Connect works for generic tunnels, it may not be practical in many deployments because load balancers, reverse proxies, and security policies often expect normal HTTP request semantics. So even if Connect is conceptually possible, it may not be operationally viable for actual registry environments. Next and last slide, please. So all that has been said, the authors see two possible ways forward. One position is for the working group to confirm that BCP 56 does not apply to this transport mapping. Another option is to clarify the architecture choice in the document itself. So we I don't know, in light of the talk between James and Mark Nottingham, if these proposed next steps should be verified, should be changed or not. Please, James, have your say on it.
Yeah, to fill the working group in on the discussion with Mark, he does not support use of HTTP as a general transport mechanism, but apparently the editors for Doe met with Mark, and in the case of EOH, we met to describe what is attempting to be solved, and it seemed like he was receptive for EOH. That goes along with his being receptive to Doe as well. So it's not a general case, but the ability to be able to leverage HTTP as a transport for an existing application protocol, which may have some specific requirements, like in the case of EPP being stateful, seemed to be acceptable. But we'll see based on his more recent review.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you, Mario. Please, folks, we have less than 2 minutes left, and we have quite a queue, which we've now closed the queue. Pavel, you're next.
Yes, thank you. I have one question to the editors of this draft, because I think over the mailing list there were contradictory, let's say, approaches to this BCP 56 discussion. On the one end, there were statements that this draft is fully compliant with BCP 56, and on the other end, there were statements saying it does not apply. If it's fully compliant, that there is no problem of it, let's say, to apply or not. And I wanted to have clarity what's the position of editors on this one.
Okay, thank you, Pavel. Before you respond, Mario, let me just see, do the others want to speak to the BCP 56 issue? Andy or Martin? No, Martin, no? Okay. Let me just say with respect to that, as chair, having talked to our area director about this too, I don't have a preference as to which one of these two choices we go to here. I think the important part of the process to call out is that it is incumbent on the document shepherd, which would be Gavin in this case, okay, to call out this particular issue and explain that we had this directorate review and they had a point of view and the working group chose a different point of view. So that has to be captured and documented in the shepherd write-up. There is a question in there for that. So if we're going to do something, which it seems like we are, that is different from the way the directorate approached it, we need to get in front of that when it goes to the IESG so that they have all of that information and then they can make the decision that they want to make. We're not obligated to do exactly what they say, but if we do something different, we do have to explain it and rationalize it. So I think that would be the answer to you, Pavel, for right now. On the mailing list here, we'll have to ask this question, Mario, as to which way to go in terms of the next steps on that issue and see what consensus we can get. And with that, Andy, you're up next.
Yes, Andy Newton. As an individual, I think it would be great if we had some registrars show up and say they want this, because they're the ones who bear the burden of multiple transports, not the registries. So I think before we go forward with any EPP transports, we need to have the registrars say they want this.
Okay. That should be included in the implementation status, I would say, right? If there is such a thing.
No, having a registry come up with an EPP SDK with the transport is different than the registrars wanting it.
Okay, so are you suggesting the document should be held up until at least one registrar?
Can I speak to this? I'm a little bit concerned about setting a hurdle for a multi-stakeholder model at the IETF. The fact that we need to have registrars come in and vote on whether or not they have a need for this. Seems against what we do at the IETF.
No, it's not uncommon for the IETF to ask for multiple people for it to be useful to all parties. That's not uncommon. And normally I don't really I don't personally care about a lot of things that we can just do that aren't that harmful. But in this particular case, it is registrars who bear the majority of the burden, not the registries. And so we need registrars to show up and say they want this.
Mario, are you
I-
aware of any
yeah.
registrars who have done this?
I can speak as far as our experience at .at is concerned. So we have been running this implementation since 2009. So I can assure that the burden for we have a lot of small registrars at .it. I can assure that the burden required to implement this approach is not so big. So I really don't understand the concern about implementing this, because as I said, as I wrote in some posts on the mailing list, implementers are more used to submit HTTP request and handle HTTP requests rather than TCP sockets, in my opinion. So
Mario, if I may, just in the interest of time, I think what you're saying is there are registrars who've implemented this, and
Yeah.
And you would be able to gather some implementation data about that to include in the implementation status.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Andy, you have a follow-up?
yeah, as was stated on the list, there is a difference between them wanting it and having to do it. Okay, a lot of the registrars had to do it to speak to certain registries. Didn't mean they liked it. Okay, so we need the registrars to show up and say they want this.
We'll have to take this offline and discuss it further. I honestly, this is an optional thing to start with. So given that there are registrars that have done it, registries get to make this choice. It's just the way to do it if you do it this way. And I don't believe we can hold this document up based on requiring that registrars say they want it. It's just a documentation on how to do something which is optional. But I'm willing to let this conversation continue on the list, and we'll take that further. Please, Martin.
Martin, SIN. Thank you, Mario, for this update. I do like having this option for EPP. I think it will help for deployment of EPP in more modern environments for deployment, and also tooling that's available. I do have kind of an issue with the table you presented in slide, I forgot the slide number, but where you compare EOH with DOH and OHTTP. I think that that's kind of comparing apples and oranges, where DOH and OHTTP are inherently stateless, and EOH is a stateful protocol over HTTP. There's a clear difference there. So I'm not sure if this is a fair comparison. And also, I also talked to co-author Jim Gold about this already. For me, reading the draft, it's not always clear what the relationship is between HTTP connection sessions and APP connection sessions, how they relate to each other, how they map to each other. And I think if you can write that down a little bit more clearly, then that, at least for me, that would help a lot. Thank you.
So Martin, have you asked this question on the list, or this is?
Well, I gave a bunch of feedback on the list, and I think this was also one of those, yeah.
Okay. So Mario, just in the interest of time, if you could take that question on board, and let's bring that to the list in order to move this along. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we have now used up the 10 minutes that we actually had left over in our agenda earlier, but let's see if we can get some back. Mario, you are up next to tell us about verified contacts.
Actually, it's me.
Oh, Pavel.
Yes. Can I get control of the slide, please?
What does it say? Okay, please go ahead.
No, can I have control of the slides? Oh, yeah, now it appeared. Sorry. Yeah.
should
So I know it's confusing. I should have been on site before I was going to present this topic, even though Mario's name is on the draft. But as co-author, I think it's okay. So I do it remotely. So just a recap, what this draft is about putting the information about verification status of contact data in RDAP, which is, let's say, appearing more and more at demand coming from regulations and compliance in some countries. So basically, we want to have it standardized to avoid fragmentation, if, let's say, people will start implementing it. So right now we published the 03, which actually implements the changes that Mario announced already previously in the IETF session. So basically we aligned the data structure with OIDC verified claims specification, because this was, let's say, already prior work in this area, and let's say defining much better the space. So what we changed is that the verification may refer now to one or more claims. So previously it was only one. Right now the method is broken down into two fields. It's method and evidence. I will come to that in more detail on the next slides. We added trust framework identifier. We added an extension element. Basically, it's empty in this base specification, but it's there to allow extensibility, because we see that people may want to add elements to this this output in the later stages. And we have the elements which are mentioned here. Actually, right now in the JSON values registry with initial set of registered values and extendable as possibility. And we also added a remarks element, basically to have a possibility to add any textual additional info. So this is how it looks right now. As you see, the claims is now an array. The whole structure is an array, so we may have multiple verification objects which may refer to different claims, or these claims may overlap, so we don't put any limits on this. And there are the properties which describe the verification done. There is the verifier ID, verification ID, which was already there before. And the remarks, as I mentioned, all elements are actually more or less optional, so the implementer can choose which elements they want to implement, or they want to publish, or they must publish. So the claims, as I mentioned, it describes which data element. So basically, there's the initial list. The names of the properties are derived from OpenID. We decided just to replace underscore with spaces to align better with RDAP conventions, but other than that, they are basically taken over as is. There's a trust framework. Right now we have just two in the proposal. So the IDES, which is known, and the private one, which is basically saying that the verification is done by the policy of the server, but it may be some additional universal frameworks entered to the JSON data value registry. So evidence is actually the new thing, the breakdown. So evidence is actually saying what was verified. So it can be something obvious like ID card, but it can be other forms of documentation like birth certificate, utility statements, or it can be even some database lookups. So basically the initial set of values is pretty long. Also here derived from prior work in OpenID. The second element is the method element, which basically describes how it was done. So just here 2 examples. The list is also longer, as telling, for example, there was a physical verification of the evidence, or maybe a remote verification of the evidence. So why we did it? Because now we can combine the 2. So previously it was 1 field. So basically every combination would have to be 1 distinct field, and now we can combine. So as 2 examples here, we have ID card, which can be verified in person, or it can be also verified remotely. And the same about the verification method. It can be applied to different evidences same way. Not every combination of it makes sense, of course, but we leave it open to the people actually doing the verification to lay down the policies. There's just an output, so basically we don't restrict any combinations here. And one item I wanted to bring up. So basically, right now, this draft defines 5 new JSON value types, let's say, into the registry. And Ayana gave us a feedback or the question to the working group for the working group to consider if the JSON values repository or registry should be maybe broke down by the type. So basically, each section with a distinct type may have, let's say, reference to its originating document, and maybe different registration procedures if the document so requires, or different DEs, or at least to have a kind of additional registry of the types itself, which would have these references. So this was a discussion that came up from Ayana, and it would be good to have some opinions from the working group, and also whether, let's say, redefining this registry belongs to this draft because it's, let's say causing the issue, or it's rather better suited to have a separate draft, let's say, making the organization of the registry. I don't know which draft it would be to reorganize registry. Here I have personally no experience, but any opinions are welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Pavel. We have time for 1 question.
Yeah, I had just one more slide. So basically, from author's perspective, this document is right now ready in the sense that if people think that the adoption of the working group will be possible, we would like to ask it. So on the putting the question reverse, we would like to hear if anyone sees an issue of adopting this document.
Thank you, Pavel. Gavin?
Thank you. Yeah, I'll be very quick. Firstly, I think this is a good piece of work. I can think of at least 1 large CCTLD operator that already publishes this sort of thing in their WHOIS, so being able to do it in RDAP seems like a really useful thing. Secondly, splitting out the JSON values into subregistries might not be a bad idea, but definitely not in this document. It needs to be something separate. Thirdly, I'm really worried about this extensible extension. So you can have an extension that can be extended. I think that sounds hairy, and from speaking as a client, I would not want to go anywhere near that. Unless you've got a direct need for something, don't do it. Just make something, do it some way that's extensible using the syntax we've got already. So remarks or JSON values or something, but don't allow arbitrary JSON objects inside your object inside an object, because it's a rabbit hole that we'll never get out of.
It was not meant like this. So there is basically one element which is linked to a JSON types registry. So basically you can add elements to it. So there are not, let's say, random objects that you can put inside. It's just, but people have a clear reference from IANA registry if they appear to see this elements.
I mean, the draft as it reads now doesn't really talk about that, as far as I can see. Maybe I missed it, but if you're going to keep it in there, then I think it probably needs its own separate section to discuss all of that, because it didn't seem visible to me. Thanks.
Right.
Right. So, yeah. So, Pavel, do you accept that those are questions that we can bring to the list to address the three questions that Gavin, I believe I distinctly heard three different things, only two. One comment, two questions. Okay, fair enough. We can take those to the list. I think the important question from the chair's point of view is whether there are any objections to adopting this document. And I'm not seeing any hands in the room that suggest that. Pavel, I think then the question then is to take it to the list. We're going to need to ask on the list if there's any objections to adopting it. And if they're not, then we'll put it on our list of documents for consideration. Okay?
Yeah. We'll make a request over the list as usual. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have the extended key usage and mutual TLS and EPP. Zaid, you online? Do you want to speak to this? And I'm looking and he's not online. Is there anyone else who's prepared to speak to this on Zaid's behalf? No? Okay, then I think we will skip over that for right now, and we'll take that to the list. The question is to what to do with that. Gavin, you're up next for your presentation, and I want to warn folks in advance. Please be ready. Gavin has prepared a show of hands that he would like to execute as part of his presentation. So be ready for that when we get there. Gavin, over to you. Would you like to click?
Please, thank you. Yeah, so this is just my initial thoughts on the issue that was found in RFC 9803. And I should say thank you in advance to the person who reported this. They came to me privately, said, I think I found a problem here, obviously trying to maintain my dignity for making such an obvious mistake, but in the interest of transparency, you should go to the erratum. So we have this now, so we now know that we need to fix it. So the XML schema has an error in that it only allows a single custom resource record to be shown in info responses and in create and update commands, and that's a mistake because it should allow multiple customs, and we need to do something about that. So when I was told about the error, I did some noodling in my Git repository for the original draft, and very quickly came up with the fix, and you can see it there in green. Apologies to those who are colorblind, but it's great. It's the one that says @custom. Adding that in makes the unique selector work on both attributes rather than just the for attribute that works on for and if present custom. So to fix this, we need to publish an update to 9803. The new document would have the corrected XML schema in its formal syntax section. And the question I want to ask people about is, should the namespace URI be updated? Should we go from TTL 1.0 to TTL 1.1? I think it should, but I want to hear from you first. And here's my rationale for explaining why. Because there's an interoperability issue. Because if a client and a server both think they're implementing the same version of the extension, but they actually aren't, then you're going to end up in a situation where either a client sends something to a server that the server can't process, you get an unexpected error, or, and which is probably a worse scenario, the server sends something to the client that the client can't validate, so suddenly that domain name or that object, whatever it is, just becomes dark to that client because they don't know, they can't validate it, they can't see it, it doesn't, that's a problem. So So the contradiction is this is a very small change to the actual specification for this extension, but it is actually significant because if we don't change the namespace URI, you get this interoperability problem. So I want to have a show of hands. I can see Jim's hand is up, but can we do the show of hands first and then go to Jim? Yeah, I think Jim's just doing it now. There we go.
And there's the show of hands poll. If folks would please take a moment. If you haven't already, please log into the room in the meeting tool, client side, and of course, all the remote attendees.
Okay, so we've got
Watching
about
the number climb a bit, yeah.
So we've got what, 12, 13, 18 out of 44. So a couple more, please, and then we get to 50%. Okay.
So you got a third.
We have one person who says no. I'm going to guess that that's Jim Gould. His hand is now down, or is he just? I'm just hidden on the screen. Jim Gould, do you want to offer your thoughts?
Yeah, I am the one that said no. Yes, you got me. Yeah, the reason why was I actually mentioned this on the list that I believe this was a true mistake. I can't imagine that anybody would have done it the way that it was described. And so I wouldn't really consider this to be a material change to the interface itself. That's the reason why.
Okay. Does anyone? Yeah. I mean, has anyone changed that? Had their mind changed? Anyone else has something to comment? And Jim Reed is in the queue as well.
Jim Reed. Thanks, Gavin. I really don't know. So I'm one of the ones that's sitting on the fence right now. But my question is, do we need to do this right now? Could it wait until the DELEG stuff is a little bit in a better shape than it is right now? Is there any pressing need to fix it immediately?
There actually isn't, and there was a slide in this deck that I removed because actually it's questionable whether this is something we really need to prioritize right now.
Yeah.
And my presentation is really short because I don't want to waste our time on this because I mean the erratum is recent, so I thought it was worth talking about it now whilst it's still warm in everyone's head. But so this issue won't affect DELEG. Will affect the thing that comes after DELEG.
Yeah.
And it took us 50 years to get from 0 to DELEG. So who knows when the next thing after DELEG is going to come. So this is not I don't think this is a pressing issue, but I just wanted to establish, what we think we should do. And then when the appropriate time has come, we don't have to have this debate again.
Yeah, I mean, I think from my point of view, I think this is a theoretical problem, and maybe there are other more pressing priorities for the working group to
I would
right
agree.
Thank you. Rick Wilhelm?
Thanks, Jim. Rick Wilhelm. Jim Reed stole one of my questions. The other question I would ask is, have we had a similar situation before where we've had a minor glitch, minor error, and what have we done previously? Have we rolled and tweaked the schema, or have we just let it slide and colloquially changed it silently?
So the thing that's closest to this one is the issue with RFC 3915, and it was the other way around. So the schema in the the XML schema in the RFC was correct, but the text that described it was wrong. There was a separate issue, which was the XML that was published by IANA was also wrong because it came from a previous version. And IANA were able to fix the XML schema that was published on their website because that's, they fixed it so it correctly represented what was in the RFC. The issue we have is that the XML schema that's in the RFC is wrong. And I don't believe there's anything comparable to that. The other possible comparison is the change to RFC, or the change that became RFC 5910, but actually that's the DNS extension for those who don't memorize RFCs. But that was quite a big change from the original 4310, I think it was. And so, it's not a directly comparison because the difference between 4310 and 5910 was quite big. It was a change to the schema, significant change to the schema. And I think it was clear-cut case there that you needed to change the namespace URI. This is a small, but it's still big enough, I think, to justify a namespace change. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Pavel?
Can you hear me? Because I have some error.
I can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. So to the timing issue, it sounds like very straightforward fix. So we should have a pretty quick turnaround on this in the working group, I believe. So it can be pretty quick to the working group last call. This is at least my impression about it. When doing so, I would rather do it now than later, before people, let's say, really start implementing this, because then the burden on the implementers will be higher. I strongly believe that there are a handful implementers right now about this extension because it's pretty fresh.
Yeah. No, this is the kind of the corollary to the timing issue question. Is if we do it now, the operational pain of having to migrate between two versions is much smaller because there's fewer implementations and the code is fresher. It would be good to hear from people who are implementing this or have plans to, about their feeling about when we should do this. Actually, yeah.
And actually, our effort is like we bear the cost of this error, not the implementers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I'm not aware of too many implementations of this. So
no, two.
Yeah.
On the server side, on the client side, only my own.
Right. So one question I would ask is, are you prepared to produce the document when all of that happens?
Yeah.
I think I'm inclined, unless anyone objects, I think the answer is, take your comment and advice too about, we don't have to do anything about this right now, but let's keep it on our list. And you should, when it's convenient for you, I would say, produce a biz document so that we have that ready. Maybe we might think of adopting it just to have it in the queue when it's visible and it's there.
Yeah.
And I leave that to your timing. I don't think there's any urgency. I'm not hearing any on our side for it. But let's at least get it listed and on the docket so we're aware of the issue.
Yeah.
So that would be good.
Okay. Thank you. No more.
Okay. Thanks very much. Thank you, everyone. And with that, I believe I get the last presentation, and I'm going to turn the mic over to Jorge.
Okay.
Okay.
Right. Go ahead, Jim, please.
I'm going to stand up here at the microphone just to emphasize that I'm doing this as a participant, and co-chairs Antoine and Jorge will be shepherding this document as chairs. So it represents the second official time we're going to ask for working group adoption coming at the end. We got some excellent comments. I want to give Pavel credit, notably to him, who sort of raised the larger question of the narrative and what things look like. I got just a very short number of slides here. I'm going to go through them probably a little bit quickly, I hope. And the important thing here is we have not changed. Our intent was not to change anything in the document. So all of the technical details are intended to be the same, but we certainly have done some radical work on the narrative. So that was to be responsive to working group comments. They really wanted it in a better narrative before considering adopting it. So I hope that this meets the request of the group from last time. So very quickly, summary of the changes. Most notably, it really is about terminology. Going back to 5730 and 3375, we kind of did a careful look at that, and we moved forward on adopting, terminology from those two documents in terms of how we represented things. So We moved away from the way we were talking about things. We talk about a shared central repository, registries as defined in that document. The document is intended to be based on objects generally, but in fairness, we kind of left it as really focusing, using the phrase domain objects. There is a sentence in the document that says we use it generically, but there's probably, if we really wanted to generalize and make this generally applicable so that other kinds of things that might use EPP could use it, we're certainly open to that. But we focused on the domain case because that's really what we've been most attentive to, and hope it's generally applicable. We added a definition for the same entity principle. And in particular, we made that a registry has to define what equivalence means. This is so that we're no longer talking about variance. It's just about an equivalent set. So we also adopted the terminology and phrasing from the last meeting. This is now called the same entity set. So we're no longer talking about a variant set. You know, in large part, this is because we also realized it was important to have a general term because we do want this to be useful even for Latin diacritics, which are not generally regarded as variants. Variants are a very particular thing which is associated with IDNs. So we really wanted a registry in an out-of-scope way to define a policy that declares equivalence, and that's what's stated in the document. And then with that, registries and registrars can interact. We do have some new terms which we've added and defined. I do want to be clear that we did try to refer specifically to what's required in that registry policy. It is outside of scope of the document, but there are certain things that have to be in it in order for things to work. And of course, it has to be shared between the registry and registrar. When both of those parties exist, then they also have to both have knowledge of what's in it, and that too is outside of scope, how that's shared. The assumption here is that both parties know what's going on. The important thing is the policy has to define equivalence, and where appropriate, it has to specify things called options. We give examples of options, and the example we give is because they are applicable to variants. So when you're using this same entity thing for variants, these particular options are useful, and they are talked about a bit in some of the document as part of the example. But it's important to understand these are just examples. Options are neither required nor limiting. So you can create more or you can have none. But we will include a mechanism in the XML so that options where appropriate can be included. And here's just a description of 3. There's more words in the document about those 3. There's a whole bunch of terms that we have now more clearly defined and tried to make generic. So I'm not really going to walk down these at the moment. I guess the important ones here are migrating to same entity principle and same entity set. The rest are terms that come out and are necessary in order to use a set and the elements of the set. There are details in the document. I assume folks can read that. And so the important thing that we're looking for here is requesting working group adoption. We have tried to be responsive to comments from before. And so the critical question from me at the moment is, have we responded to the concerns that were offered up at the last meeting? And if so, and without any issues, then we will ask on the list for working group adoption of this particular version. So that's it for the presentation.
Okay. Thank you, Jim. James, you're in the list, please.
Yeah, I think I made this comment the last IETF that I think there's a need to include the XML schema and a concrete set of examples for each of the commands. Is there a reason why that's not included at this point, Jim?
Why example XML is not there? Just because we
or,
didn't get
or the XML schema.
Oh, yeah, we just didn't get to it. I'm sorry. It
Okay.
certainly would be added.
Yeah, I would look to have you add that, and that way you have a concrete idea of how this is supposed to work. Thanks.
Yes, absolutely.
Antoine?
Yeah, hi, Jim. I think I've asked this question before, but is there any guidance in the document what a registry should do when policy changes? In other words, I've mentioned this many times. It's when you have two for the price of one. What happens when you cancel one of the object? Is there an object status that defines what a policy change will have for impact?
No, the policy itself and how it's distributed and managed is outside the scope of the specification. We don't get into that.
Okay, so there's no status for an object to say, this is an equivalent.
So if I understand your question, are you suggesting that we might want to maybe have a version number associated with the policy that's in force? I'm just making stuff up.
Yeah, it's more that when you query for a name, for example, that is an equivalent, right? You will see that, right?
Yes, that would be the expectation.
So what happens to that status when the policy changes?
It's not included in the document, and we had not considered including that in the document up to this point, because the policy and its management is currently considered out of scope. But if you think that we should explore that, I'm not opposed, but I want to think that through a little more.
Yeah, me too. So I guess I will be reviewing that when the document is adopted.
Okay, that's fair. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Antoine. Pavel?
Yeah, so I reviewed the new version of the document, and I see a lot of things that I have been raising last time have been addressed. So thank you for that. There are still a few points that I think can be still considered too much into the policy, but there are, I would say, rather minor things. So I think it's going definitely into a good direction. I think there are some formatting issue in the document itself, like technical matter. There's a lot of HTML encoded examples, which kind of make it impossible to read, but I think this is the technicality. Yeah, so this is the comment.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask you, just for clarity, so are you saying that you do have issues, and that's fair, but you don't object to adopting? There's nothing as a showstopper to adoption?
I think the document is now in this shape that let's say it can be worked on by the working group. Yes.
Okay, thank you, and very happy to take on board any questions or concerns that you have and deal with that. And sorry about any formatting issues.
Thank you, Pavel. Edmund?
Yeah, Edmund here. I haven't looked into it deeply. I took a look quickly earlier this week. Just a couple of questions. One is I'm understanding that these variants are essentially domain objects, and all the other things that you do with domain objects you can actually do, like adding DNSSEC, like creating child hosts, and all those kind of things. That's a correct understanding, right? Okay. The one thing that I did want to ask is, right now it seems like the primary domain is the one that is created and it stays that way. Is there a way to change that, or does the current, if it doesn't, it's okay for me, but could it prevent an extension to allow changing of a primary domain?
Well, I don't know how to prevent an extension of any sort, so
Okay.
can't really speak to that.
Sure.
For the purposes of this extension, the primary is not allowed to change. Once it comes into existence, then it defines the set. And if you try to change it, then there's no change. You basically have to delete it and recreate it, and recreate the set with a different primary. And that's because we're allowing for the policy for the primary domain to set options. One of the option types in the that we allow for is what's called prescribed. And that's where when the primary domain is created, that primary decides what certain options might be. So there's that in the policy requirements. We talk about the policy having prescribed options. And with that, you really can't change it because that changes the set.
Right. So, but the policy, I think, talks about potentially changing the primary, but the answer to that is delete it and recreate it, right? So that's essentially what we are saying here.
Yeah, that would be different work from our point of view. It's not part of this document.
Okay. Last thing is, what Anton brought up, I think it's kind of interesting. I'd like to take a little bit a look at the status part of whether there needs to be additional status things for grandfathered stuff as well. I haven't thought through it. I don't know whether you have thought through grandfather stuff.
I have actually a lot, but it's not in this document because I think that that's a policy issue. So it's outside of all of this. But we believe that we have a protocol specification that will handle that and handle exempt is the new official term, not grandfathered. And trying to be neutral about these kinds of things. But yeah, I know that on the ICANN side for GTLDs, I mean, all of that is there, and this actually supports all of that. And Michael has done this implementation, so you know, we know that it works, at least in his implementation. So it'll be interesting to see if others do that and how that gets handled.
Okay, thank you, Edmund. We're running out of time, but get me really quick.
Oh, 2 minutes, yeah. Overall for the whole meeting.
I put myself in the queue with no expectation that I would be allowed to speak, so I appreciate that. Thank you. I just wanted to say you said the primary of a set can't be changed because the policy says the primary set of a set can't be changed. That sounds like policy going into the protocol. What if you have an EPP repository where the policy says that the primary can be changed? That means they can't use this. They have to come up with something else. I know this is opening a huge can of worms, but just saying it's worth. It may be that it's something you just have to reflect as a limitation or known or an accepted limitation or something. But you know, there will be CCTLD operators who, you know, for whatever reason, have a policy that says you can change the primary of a set. And they'll look at this and they'll be sad.
Fair enough. You know, having been driven by IDN variants, you know, the changing of the primary is changing the primary label is a deeply fundamental cornerstone issue, as I know you well understand. Happy to think this through some more. You know, I mean, we certainly, well, you and I haven't interacted, but certainly have interacted with others. I mean, it just based on drawing from IDN variants, this seemed like you know, an obvious restriction that had to be there, and from a technical level in support of IDNs. But it's a fair comment that if you want to be able to support other things besides IDNs, maybe you don't want that restriction. I'm happy to think that through some more. You know, maybe we can do something a little different, or as you say, maybe that's just a limitation to this protocol, and that's what we have to do.
It may be that allowing for that just makes the whole thing so complicated that it becomes impossible to define or implement or enclose within a useful scope, and you just have to say, this is just what we're working on as an axiom.
Well, that's kind of where we landed when we did what we did. But I'm happy to let that discussion happen. If we can come up with something that works, I'm all for it. I'm not opposed to good features that are concise. So
cool.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so please send the request for the documentation to the mailing list and see what happens then.
Okay, will do. I think they're going to want you closer to the mic.
Okay, sorry. Any other business? Nope.
Pavel, are you by any chance going to say anything, or that was your chance?
Me? What? Sorry?
Did you, the issue that you brought to the attention of the chairs earlier today, did you want to say anything about that or not?
I was just facilitating the communication, but I have no stakes or any insights into the issue. So if the person who was about to speak to it is not here, I'm afraid I cannot help.
Okay, no, that's fine. Then we'll redirect to take it to the list. Sorry to call you out.
All right. So thank you very much. We'll just wrap it up. See you in Vienna.